You know, it's always interesting to watch the reaction in the entertainment media complex when they run smack bang into a reality so irrefutable that no amount of cope, doublethink, spin doctoring, or manipulative "and that's a good thing" articles can possibly obfuscate it. That's right, the court of box office opinion has rendered its verdict on the Marvels, dear viewer, and their judgment has been harsh and unanimous. This movie is officially a flop. In fact, calling The Marvels a flop is a bit like saying that Movie Bob has some questionable opinions about the human race. Yes, it's technically a true statement, but it doesn't really encompass the full magnitude of the problem. The movie recorded an embarrassing $47 million on its opening domestic weekend, by far the worst performance out of any Marvel movie ever. Damn man, even The Incredible Hulk managed to bring in $55 million, and that was 15 years ago. Oh my goodness. Who could possibly have predicted this? Well, everyone as it turns out. Everyone except the people who made the thing apparently. No matter how you try to spin it, the movie has been an unmitigated disaster, and now that it's impossible to lie their way out of that fact, the focus has shifted instead on finding a politically acceptable explanation that allows the studio to save face. It wasn't a bad movie, you see. The real problem was the actors' strike preventing the stars from promoting it. Because truly, whenever Brie Larson opens her mouth to talk about Captain Marvel, she's an instant hit with audiences.
Tom Cruise over here?
No, I'll be the first me, not the next Tom Cruise. Thank you very much.
Well, you know.
And if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that scripted, corporate-approved puff-piece interviews on late-night talk shows are where every thinking man goes to form their opinions about the latest film releases. How about superhero fatigue? That's a reliable excuse that can get conveniently wheeled out whenever a film flops. Marvel have just been putting out too many hits in recent years, proving the point that you really can have too much of a good thing. And then of course there's the ultimate get out of jail free card for your shitty movie: sexism and misogyny. All of those toxic man babies out there just couldn't stomach the idea of a female-led movie and had to pummel it into the ground lest other humans of a female persuasion start getting dangerous ideas that they can do things for themselves.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Be silent. Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth.
It's mostly bullshit, of course, and it either ignores or misrepresents the multitude of actual reasons why this movie was practically doomed from the start. But hey, if the access media aren't interested in calling it like it is, then I guess the drinker will have to step in and do their job for them. So strap in as I break down the real reasons why the Marvels flopped. 1. It's part of a dying brand. You don't need me to tell you that the MCU has been in decline for several years now, partly caused by a meandering, fragmented, and unengaging narrative that doesn't really feel like it knows where it's going, or that it's building towards anything, and partly because of a sharp decline in the quality of their movies. Marvel suffered a series of embarrassing flops and underperformers over the past 3 years, meaning there's less and less incentive to go see them. Yeah, superhero fatigue is a thing that's starting to cut into the box office, but more specifically, what they're facing here is Marvel fatigue. There's too much content and it's mostly shit, and as a result it's souring people on the entire brand. 2. There's no big names attached to it. Harsh as this may sound, none of the actors in this movie are the kind of box office draws that a film like this desperately needs to generate buzz. Iman Vellani, Zawe Ashton, and Teyonah Parris are all fucking nobodies. Brie Larson's only high-profile role was in the first Captain Marvel 4 years earlier, and at this point, even Samuel Jackson isn't all that exciting, partly because he seems determined to appear in every single movie getting made, so his presence isn't exactly a big event anymore, and partly because nobody cares about his character now. Nick Fury's been gradually broken down and deconstructed in recent years to the point where the coolest character in the MCU, played by the coolest actor in Hollywood, feels more like a fat, embarrassing middle-aged dad trying to hang with his son's friends. Which brings me along to my next point. Number 3, there's no popular characters. The movie features a trio of female superheroes at its core, 2 of which have only appeared in obscure Disney Plus shows, and a third which was never popular in the first place and has barely been seen in over 4 years. Yeah, I know there's still a few die-hard Marvel NPCs out there that'll literally defend anything shat out by the MCU and just love to point out that the first Captain Marvel made over $1 billion at a time when every fucking Marvel movie was making $1 billion. In reality though, it was the most protected movie in history. The review scores were carefully managed to give it the most positive rating possible, and it was released under the most favourable market conditions that have ever existed, conveniently sandwiched between two of the biggest films in the entire MCU, when excitement for the brand was at a fever pitch, with a marketing campaign that somehow managed to convince everyone that it was going to be an event movie on the same level as Infinity War and Endgame. Put simply, it wasn't, but by the time everyone realised that fact, it was too late and the movie had made bank. Either way, the point is that nobody was particularly invested in Captain Marvel as a character, mainly because she didn't really have one. She was a perfect example of what Gary likes to call the hero's journey, a wish fulfillment power fantasy that starts out strong and awesome, is liked by almost everyone, wins at everything to become even stronger and more awesome, and eventually realises that the only thing holding her back from god tier level of awesomeness is the rest of the world failing to accept how amazing she is. I mean, really, is it any wonder that people didn't connect with a character like that? And the thing is, she's not exactly alone either, which brings me neatly on to Number 4, the MCU. After disposing of Ike Perlmutter, who was basically the only thing keeping the MCU on track, one of Kevin Feige's stated objectives was to introduce more female characters into the MCU. In fact, he wanted more than 50% of Marvel heroes to be female. Now, a smart writer could have found ways to gradually introduce cool, interesting, well-rounded female characters to complement rather than undermine the existing male heroes. You know, proving the point that both men and women are pretty awesome in their own ways, and that when they work together instead of against each other, great things can happen. The writers at Marvel were not smart, however. Instead, what we ended up with was a relentless deluge of smug, generic, overpowered, patronising boss bitches that the scripts were painfully eager to depict as smarter, stronger, more capable, more righteous, and more assertive than the dumb, timid, outdated imposters now wearing our favourite heroes like skin suits. They usually excelled in traditionally male-dominated fields like science, technology, aerospace, and engineering. They were often completely self-taught, and of course, they never needed help from a man. And by God, Marvel really went all in with this one. If a movie or TV show happened to have a male lead, you could basically guarantee there would be at least 2 or 3 of these strong female supporting characters hovering around him, making fun of his grandiose posturing and consistently outperforming him in every possible way. On the other hand, if the movie was female-led, then the favour was absolutely never returned, because of course, that door only ever swings one way. And while this isn't a very diplomatic way of putting it, fuck me, that shit became real old real fast. The resulting oversaturation of poorly written, superficially strong but fundamentally unlikable female characters was soon mockingly labelled the MCU, and the result was a gradual souring of audiences towards any new female characters. People just didn't trust them anymore, because they knew exactly what they'd be getting when one of them showed up. Just another smug feminist power fantasy, here to put men in their place and pander to the female demographic. And really, Captain Marvel pretty much set the tone for the MCU before it was even a thing. She was the quintessential Marvel girl boss, always strong, always being told how great she is, never vulnerable, weak or flawed, and ultimately so physically powerful that she was practically unusable as a hero because nothing could threaten her. After 4 years of being beaten over the head by the insufferable girl boss archetype, it's no wonder the audiences were less than excited to go see a movie built around 3 of the fucking things. Number 5. It sucks. I mean, I don't think that point requires much elaboration, really. The Marvels is basically a shit film with a bland, formulaic story that feels like it was written by a retarded AI, boring characters with nonsensical motivations, apathetic performances, crappy editing and visual effects, and absolutely no heart or passion. In short, The Marvels was basically always gonna fail, because most of the conditions that set the original movie up to succeed were now working against it. And it does make me wonder if this film might represent a turning point of sorts, an end to the bloated, predictable excesses of a studio that once believed it could do no wrong, an end to the tired, predictable girl boss trope that's blighted so many people's enjoyment of the MCU, and in a larger sense, an end to the reign of the big budget superhero movie. Next year is going to be a quiet one for Marvel, with only a single movie penciled in for release, and it does make me wonder if they'll use this lull in production to rethink their creative direction. Time will tell, but something tells me the failure of the Marvels is something they won't forget in a hurry. Now, just before I fuck off to drink myself into oblivion again, I wanted to remind you that my shiny new Critical Drinker merch store is now up and running and accepting orders. I figured it was about time to turn this stuff over to artists and designers who actually knew what they were doing, and they've already produced some kick-ass designs that look miles better than anything that was available before. So if you're interested in taking a look, I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.